Hey, I just want to take a minute and thank everyone who is watching these videos. Aren't these fun? I love getting emails from people and them describing their encounters and corresponding with people on this. I'm not a researcher. I'm a story guy. I love the stories. It's fascinating to me how many of these encounters go on in the southern United States. So I hope you guys are enjoying them. Today we have two. I'm going to share with you two encounters that have been emailed to me. One occurred in Mississippi and the other occurred in Texas. This channel's kind of centered around the southern Bigfoot. So here we go. This story is from a guy named Joe Lawson. He lives in Texas, but he grew up in the Mississippi River Delta, and he writes, Cam, I started listening to your YouTube stories a few weeks ago. Great stuff. I grew up over in the Delta, and one of the stories you posted recently really resonated with me. The farmer who had been obsessed with Bigfoot and then got herded by three that scared the crap out of him. I'm pretty sure I know this guy in the land where this happened. I grew up with the Mississippi River levee in my backyard and hunted those same woods where I believe this happened. I often felt a weird presence in the woods as I loved to follow game trails and stalk the prey. When I was about 16, my dad and I were fall turkey hunting along a creek that divided some of the farmland properties. There was a large patch of woods next to where we were that was leased to hunters as a part of a hunting club. Well, we had stalked a group of turkeys and knew where they had been roosting. So one morning we set up on a creek and built some quick blinds with cane. Then waited for them to come down, which they did right on schedule. We were hearing all the usual chirping, scratching, and an occasional gobble, and they were coming straight for us. Then the sound suddenly stopped. We looked at each other, wondering what had happened. Suddenly, something let out a blood-curdling scream or wail that sounded like a cross between a woman screaming and a gorilla roar. It must have been only about 50 or 60 yards away in the woods. To say I got goosebumps and the hair on my neck stood up doesn't begin to cover it. I was really shaken. I looked at my dad and asked what the hell that was. He looked at me and I could see from his expression he didn't know and was a bit alarmed. But instead of suggesting we leave, he calmly looked back to where the turkeys were and just said, "Don't worry about it, just focus on the turkeys." I guess he figured we had shotguns with us, so why worry? But right as he said that, there was a huge commotion in the woods, like something tearing through the trees and brush, and suddenly all the turkeys were flying. My dad yelled, "Shoot them!" We both shot a couple of turkeys and the rest flew off, and whatever made that scream took off too. As we gathered our birds, I again asked what that was. He just looked at me and said, "I don't know. I've hunted most of my life and experienced a lot of crazy things in the woods. I've seen all walks of wildlife and heard all types of cat screams, bear roars, and other animals, but never anything like what we heard that day. That is, until I heard a recording on YouTube of Sasquatch howls and screams. I knew then that I had never been alone in the woods all those times when I went out on my own. I now live in Texas, and we have our own sightings in and around the state. Maybe I'll hear it again while we're out on a hike." Thanks, Joe. That was a great encounter, and I really appreciate you sending that in. Here's a second encounter from another man who actually lives in Texas. He doesn't want to give his name, but his initials are JW. He writes, "My story is not about a close encounter. However, it's a great story and absolutely 100% true, so I'll start from the beginning. I want to stop here and say this is an encounter story. He actually sees this creature. And I think what he's trying to tell me is that he wasn't in close proximity with the beast, but it is an encounter story, JW. So here we go. It was late fall in Texas in 1991. My uncle and I were headed to work. It was just after daybreak when we came to a pasture that was about 10 acres in size. The pasture was surrounded by thick woods all the way around. This road didn't have much traffic that early in the morning, so ours was the only truck on the road. As we came up on the pasture, we noticed all the cattle were at the far end ahead of us and were looking back to the opposite end in the direction that we were coming from. As soon as we broke the wood line, for whatever reason, we both looked at the fence line and we stopped almost dead in our tracks. We both saw it about 100 yards down in the corner of the field. We got out of the truck looking at this thing. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. Judging by a few round bales of hay, this animal, standing like a person, was probably about 6.5 foot tall, and I'm guessing it weighed 225 pounds. About that time, my uncle said, "Why would someone be out here in a Bigfoot costume?" It was perfect timing because as soon as he said that, this person in a costume grabbed a sapling with its right hand and with its left hand, about a foot higher, broke off a 6-inch sapling like it was a toothpick. When the sapling broke, it was almost as loud as a shotgun. Then the part I will never forget, and I remember it like it happened yesterday. The creature grabbed a dead baby calf that was probably about a month old with its left hand, and on 2 legs started running just like a man in a sprint and was completely gone out of sight in 2 or 3 seconds. We immediately got in the truck and drove off. We didn't even talk about what we saw for almost a week. We came to the conclusion that it wasn't a human at all, and if there were such thing as Bigfoot, then that is what we saw. I've thought about the events of that morning every day of my life since then, and I hope I never see it again. Here is my description of the animal. The height was about 6.5 foot tall. I'm guessing it weighed 225 pounds. It was built kind of slender, but with toned muscle. The legs were short for its height. Its arms were long. The head was kind of tall and thin. Its hair was dark rust and black. The hair on the back of its head was kind of long and dark black, and I could not make out any facial features. And he writes, "I hope you don't think I'm crazy or that I'm making this up." JW, I do not think you're making this up. There are sightings and encounters like this all over the United States and all over the world, actually. So, and thank you so much for sending that in to both of you. Okay, listen, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks a lot.